Show me your heart. I know that it's beating. Tell me that you love me too. So I know your heart is true. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. Do you like cryptocurrency, politics, economics, activism, or art? Then check out the Tatiana Show, where you can learn all about it in a fun and non-intimidating way, as if you're just hanging with friends. Go to thetatianashow.com and listen now.
Show me your heart. I can't do it as good as Tatiana, but hello, everybody. Welcome to Proof of Love Cast. This is Stephanie Murphy with you today, and I'm joined by the lovely Lauren Kasovitz. Hi, Lauren.
Hello. I thought that was beautiful in the beginning, personally.
Oh, thank you. I've always had this fantasy of doing being like a backup singer for Tatiana. I'm gonna have to talk to her about that.
Ooh,
We've
yeah.
discussed doing karaoke a few times, but it never really happened.
Oh my God, let's do it. Our first live show. The three of us in person singing karaoke.
Oh, that would be amazing. Well, today Tatiana is not with us. She's taking care of some very important business, and maybe we'll talk about that on the show later. But Tatiana, we miss you, and I think she's probably not too disappointed to miss today's show because we are going to be talking about one of our favorite topics, reality TV shows, and specifically the show Love is Blind, which is currently the #1 show on Netflix, and it's about love. But before we get into that, I'd like to just let everybody know that Proof of Love Cast is a weekly show about relationships and love. And we love to hear from you. If you want to send us a question for the show, we do Q&A sometimes. You can go to our website, proofoflovecast.com, and you can contact us there. You can listen to all of our old shows. You can subscribe to our feed and get all kinds of good stuff, blog posts and things like that. So, I think that's all the business we have to take care of. So let's get into talking about Love is Blind.
Ooh.
So yes, Lauren, go ahead. Tell me what is the show in your words? Like if you could summarize a synopsis, what is the premise?
So the premise is that there are a certain amount of people, men and women, that are meeting each other. It's kind of a dating experiment without seeing each other. They are hearing each other's voices. They come into this situation. They are situated in what they call pods, and they get to know each other just by talking. They can't
Not Tide Pods, just pods.
Not Tide Pods. The setup is pretty cheesy, but it works. It's a very kind of like, to me, it feels kind of like a 90s futuristic vibe where you're sitting in a pod, right? It has the kind of like blurred out, I don't even know, glass, whatever it is.
Well, I'm actually really interested in how they designed the set, because the set is extremely important to the premise of the show. It looks like there's basically like a big house with two wings, and in one wing the guys are all kind of living together for a couple of weeks, and in the other wing the girls are all living together for a couple of weeks, and then they meet in the middle in this big hallway where there's like 12 rooms on each side, and then you connect with another pod on the opposite sex side. And of course this is all, I would say it's heterosexual, but not everybody on the show is heterosexual, as we see happens. No spoilers. There might be spoilers in this discussion, just so you know. So if you haven't watched it yet, pause the show, go to Netflix, watch Love is Blind, and then come back to us. But
we'll try to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, but it's pretty hard.
Yeah. I think it's okay to do a little bit of spoilers, but I just wanted to comment on the sexual orientation side of it. I've heard this show is from the same producers as Married at First Sight, which we've discussed on Proof of Love before. Married at First Sight is another reality show where experts arrange marriages, and the first time the couple sees each other is at their own wedding. But before that, there's a screening process where they interview men and women, and they ask them questions about what they're looking for in a partner and questions about themselves. And the producers of this show have been asked a lot, why don't you do gay Married at First Sight? Why don't you do gay couples?
And what did they say? I hadn't heard this. What was their...
They say because they can't prevent same-sex couples from meeting each other during the screening process.
You know what's funny? That was a big conversation that they've been having with The Bachelor and Bachelor in Paradise since Demi came out on Bachelor in Paradise as fluid. I don't know if she's said that she's bisexual, but she's pretty fluid, and that was another conversation that was had.
Yeah, there's been a couple of instances where girls have been on The Bachelor, but then ended up ditching the guy and hooking up with each other, which is great. I love to see that.
I know, to me, that's a much better show. That is much more realistic and much more entertaining. But you know what I found really interesting just on first viewing of Love is Blind? It felt very much, like you said, when they're the guys living in one part of the house, the girls living in another, there was such a strong old school real world vibe to me. Right? It just, it's one of the first reality shows in a really long time to me that even though it definitely has elements that feel producer staged, it feels very realistic. It feels kind of throwback. I don't know if I'm the only one that got that vibe, but
you know, now that you mention it, I wasn't aware of that, but I think you're absolutely right. This is a very clever move by the producers doing a throwback to the real world, which was the first reality TV show.
Right. And it was so fascinating. And this kind of has a lot of that, even just from the aesthetics and the colors that they're using and the way they're filming. It feels real. And I think it's drawing people in. And one of the things that I think is really great that they've done, and I mentioned this to both you and Tatiana in a chat, but I really love that there was no kind of separation with ages. It's like, we're going to just throw all these different ages together as well and see what happens. And
I think the casting, when they do casting for these shows, they put out a casting call that says, do you appear between the ages of 25 and 35? So that could be actually those ages, or it could be just based on appearance. And there actually is on the show a guy who is 24 and a woman who is 34. And they fall in love. They get together, even though they know each other's ages, and they're both. She's more concerned about it than he is, but you know, they know that there's a 10-year age difference, which can be a big difference when one person is in their 20s and the other person is in their 30s.
Oh yeah,
that can be a monumental age difference. You know, at that time in your life, sometimes you're in different places in life, but they decide to overcome it and get together anyway. And I think that is interesting because they do mix up the ages quite a bit.
They do. And I enjoyed watching that perspective, because I think so often, especially women, as we get older, we wonder, you know, could we be with somebody younger? Would we be too insecure? And they play, I mean, it's not overdone with this particular couple, but it is played upon, and it kind of does affect the way she's reacting to him, especially in the beginning when there are other men that she's connecting with. She's so worried about the age and them aging together, and is he ready, and does he want her if she's older? And this guy unabashedly could care less. He doesn't care if she's 60 and he's 22. He is so into her. The age isn't an issue. It's such a refreshing thing to see. And
and I think she's more worried about what other people will think of it, but then she starts telling her friends and family later in the next phase. They don't care either.
I really love that. So, okay, this is what I wanted to, from my perspective, I wanted to hear kind of how you felt about the whole process. Do you think it's a really realistic way to have people meet? Can they really find love in the long term? I came into the show thinking it was going to be a complete train wreck. Just, what is this? This is crazy. And I think, like so many people, I just got so sucked in, because within, what was it, episode 1, people are talking about loving each other. I mean, it was mind-blowing.
This was fascinating. So actually, I think we didn't quite finish the premise of the show, so I'm just going to give, from my perspective, a quick summary. So there's different phases of this, right? We talked about phase 1, which is where there's this big set and the guys live on one side, the girls live together on the other side, and then in the middle there's this hallway with the pods where there's like a screen in the middle of the pod, and they're maybe kind of connected to one from the opposite sex side, but all you can hear is the person's voice that you're talking to. You can't see them. You don't know what they look like. And I think they also encourage people not to describe even what they look like.
Yes.
I mean, I guess they could, but I didn't hear anybody doing that, or at least they didn't show it on the show. So then after that point, you have 2 weeks to get to know everybody from the opposite side, just by voice, just by conversations. And then if you like someone enough, you can propose to them. And anyone who gets engaged moves on to phase 2. In phase 2, all of the engaged couples go on sort of like a pre-honeymoon where they see each other in person. Oh, and if you have a successful proposal, you get to be reunited with your fiance, and you get to see each other for the first time. And there's like this magical moment where people are looking at each other.
So good.
So anyone who successfully gets engaged gets to go on a pre-honeymoon to Mexico. And then all of the couples are staying in the same hotel. And so they interact with each other, which could be awkward because they've all dated each other. And some of them came pretty close to choosing someone else. And so now they're all together getting drunk and, getting to know each other and partying. And then after that, they go home, they show each other their living space, like their houses and apartments in the real world. They've been deprived of their phones this entire time. So they don't have any social media, no distractions while they're getting to know their spouse or future spouse. And then once they go to Mexico, they get their phones back. They can Google their person. They can see if they made a terrible mistake. And then they, continue talking. Then they go back. Phase 3 is when they go back and show each other where they live in the real world. They are going to move to Atlanta for like 1 month to film before getting married. And then phase 4 is the weddings. And then after that, if they get married, they go on with their life as a married couple. So did I get everything? I think I did.
Yes, you definitely did. One of the things I also think is great, it makes for such great TV, is in that first phase 1, when they're all getting to know each other, hearing the men and the women discuss the relationships that they're building with the other men and women.
Yeah.
Tension filled. It is drama. I don't know how they do that. I mean, and it's such a small part of the show, but I think it's very significant. And I've wondered from a social perspective how much that affects who they pick. The competitive nature of certain people. If they're hearing that somebody is into 3 people, do they want to win? There's just so many little things that affect who they choose. I thought that was really interesting. And I mean, that doesn't happen in real life. It just doesn't.
Well, does it? Because I don't know. I mean, I thought it was fascinating that taking looks completely out of the equation, just based on voice and personality, there was one person that was getting a lot of attention. There was one guy that was getting a lot of attention from 3 different girls, and they were all sure that he was going to propose to them.
Yes. I mean, excuse my language, but like, he kind of was, at least in the beginning, the kind of walking embodiment of a modern day fuckboy. I mean, really.
Totally.
and it's funny watching. For me, I mean, as somebody who dated, I loved seeing his perspective. Almost everything he said was what I imagined somebody like that would think in their head. It was very validating.
Yeah, and he didn't have a clue what he was doing. He was bouncing around back and forth. It seemed almost random which one he chose in the end. Or that he was scared, like he didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings or make anyone angry. So he chose the one that he thought would get the angriest if he rejected her or something like that.
Yes. Oh gosh, he was leading so many women on without being malicious about it, but he was just being so careless.
Yeah. So how would you define a fuckboy, actually? What does that mean to you?
So to me, it's somebody who is really going to do whatever they can, really just to hook up. And there's variations of them for sure. There are the ones that fall on the more, sociopathic scale. And then there are the ones that really don't mean harm, but they cause harm. They're thinking with their dicks, not their head. And they're just doing what they want to do in that moment with complete disregard to the people they're hurting. There's the other side of it, which are the guys that are doing it on purpose. But I don't think that a lot of fuckboys these days are really doing it to be malicious. They're just very careless, which, I mean, at the end of the day is almost the same thing in different ways. But
yeah, like this is the thing about does intention matter, right? The philosophical question.
Sure.
I always think, like, I used to think that it matters what someone intends, if they have good or bad intentions. But then someone said to me, yeah, but if you run someone over with a truck and you meant well, you didn't mean to do it, you still ran them over with a truck and they still got hurt.
Yeah.
Right. So even if you don't mean to hurt someone, like maybe it's slightly more bad if you had malicious intentions, but usually people don't. Usually people have good intentions, especially when they're dating or, they think they have good intentions. So I would say, like, it almost doesn't matter what his intention is. If he's still hurting people and kind of being careless with their feelings, he's hurting people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he reminded me so much, down to how he looks, to a couple of guys I dated before my current fiance.
Oh,
yeah. And I could see how these girls were getting sucked in. Handsome, charming, funny, seems very.
But they didn't know he was handsome. So it had to be something about his personality and whatever information was conveyed through his voice. And I think the voice is important, isn't it?
It is so important. And that's something I wanted to discuss too. Especially, I think it's really interesting that it's you and I today, because we both had kind of mostly voice calls with the person we're with for a long time. And
yes. I want to talk about this at the end of the show when we come back to the question, is love really blind?
Yeah, I know. I would love that, because I think that is very significant. And I found it very interesting that they didn't have any idea what they looked like, but there was still the same dynamic being played out. The older girl, I mean, I put that in quotes. She's 34. She's hardly older. But the older woman was still having plenty of these guys being interested in her, and they had no idea that she's beautiful, but she's beautiful. Could they sense that she's confident in how she looks through her voice, through the way she sounded, the way she presented herself with her voice? Maybe that's something that really does come through.
Yeah, actually, when I heard her voice, I was I didn't care for her voice.
No,
let's just put it that way. That wouldn't be a person I would be attracted to based on their voice. But have you ever been attracted to someone just based on their voice, or have you ever had a person who you found attractive physically, but their voice turned you off?
Yes.
Tell me about that, because I have a story too, but tell me about yours.
Okay, the last 3 guys that I dated, including my fiance now, all have very, very deep voices. If I could get my fiance on one of these episodes one day, his voice is so deep. It's like I can't imitate it. It's so deep. But the few guys before him had that kind of deep, scratchy voice that for me is just like, rah. I love it. and I didn't realize how much I loved it until I dated somebody else in between them, a very brief thing. It's not that he had a bad voice. It's not that he had a high voice. It was just that normal tone. It just was like, hey, how you doing? To me, it was immediately like, it just read as very fratty to me. And yeah, just that kind of regular guy voice. I was like, oh, this is so normal. Like,
hey dude, can you get me a brewski?
But I think that also comes down to a lot of how we're raised. My dad has a very heavy accent. He's Israeli. And my grandparents had very heavy Eastern European accents. And so accents and kind of uniqueness and voice and tone was always something that felt very familiar to me. So the deep voice thing feels different. It's a little 1950s broadcaster. It's a little unique, and maybe not everybody would find it attractive, but to me, it just reads as masculine and different, just different, unique.
Yeah, and of course, the accent that people speak with is code for where they're from, right? Which region they're from. And in this global world, you could be talking to people from all over the place, right? In the olden times, we might not have heard different dialects or different accents of the language we spoke because we wouldn't have traveled too much outside of our group. But now we do. And for some people, they want someone who's kind of signaling that they're in the same tribe. For some people, they're attracted to foreign members, the people who are not in the same tribe are attractive.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
well, what
and
about
I think
you? Because you have this experience for sure.
Yes. Well, first I want to tell a story about a fuckboy that I dated
Yes,
a long time ago. This was when I was in college, and this person was much older than me. And it turned out he was lying to me he was actually married to someone else, and he was lying to me about that, which I found out when his wife contacted me, which was very uncomfortable. And scary, but I didn't know, I swear. So, and I broke up with him after that.
Good
but,
for you.
Yeah, but he used to tell me that he could pick up women on the phone. Like he would call customer service for something. And this was in the early 2000s. So at the time, there wasn't much in the way of, there was no social media. The internet chat, consisted of AIM and chat rooms. Mm-hmm. And he said that, he would sometimes call customer service and then he would use his voice and he would kind of adjust his voice to make it like a little deeper and, like, hey, baby, or something. I don't know what he did, but he told me that he could pick up women on the phone that way and that it worked a couple of times. And I was like, wow. God.
That doesn't surprise me. Really,
I know I should have ran at that point when he said that, but I kind of don't doubt that did work because, sometimes when someone's flirting with you on the phone, there's this element of mystery there. You're like, oh, well, but what did they look like? Right. It's almost more attractive if you don't know what they look like.
I mean, I'm just thinking about us with our voices. We all have very different voices. And I've told you this before. Your voice is so relaxing and appealing.
Oh, thank you.
and it is. And so many people that listen to this podcast have pinged me separately and been like, Stephanie's voice.
Oh, really? Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Well, I have lots of audiobooks. If they like my voice, they should go on Audible, search for my name, Stephanie Murphy, and buy my audiobooks.
Exactly. But it's true. And I mean, it has to do with also kind of the offers that you're given for what kind of books you're reading. I mean, and the things you're taking, it's your voice. It's the way it's projected. It's the way people feel when they hear it. I mean, it's the same thing with dating.
Yeah, but I can also change my voice too because, I have a background in science and I like to narrate scientific and medical material. So I have a different sound. It's more like trustworthy, warm, confident when I'm reading something technical. But when I'm reading a romance story, it's more like sexy and flirtatious. My voice can sort of go either way on that. And I struggle with how to brand myself because I don't know if I should brand myself as professional and I have this specialized skill from my special background or sexy. And how do I do both? That's kind of weird. That's kind of like a little bit of a boundary issue. So I don't know. I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I'm sorry I cut you off. I'd love to hear about your voice situation.
Oh, no, that's fine. So yes, the person that I'm with has a foreign accent and it's extremely sexy to me. And now I was not expecting this. Do I want to admit this? Okay, I'm going to talk about it and then I'm just going to let the chips fall where they may. So background, I am a Jewish woman. And I learned about the Holocaust growing up, and I never really met anybody who was German or Austrian or Swiss and that spoke German. But I always had this weird kind of, I don't know if it was a kink or something for hearing German being spoken. And I liked it, especially when I heard men speaking it or someone speaking English with a German accent. I was like, ooh, that's sexy. And, and, I met well, I guess I could say it. We're married.
Woo! Your husband!
Yes. It still feels weird sometimes to say husband because, anyway, my spouse, sometimes I say spouse. That feels more better. That. But, yeah. So, yeah, my husband is from Austria. and he grew up speaking German, and he speaks perfect English, but he has like a little slight Austrian accent. And this is so sexy to me. I love listening to his voice. And like you said, Lauren, we got to know each other a lot over video chatting online. And so this was interesting. It was almost a little bit like Love is Blind, where we were seeing each other, but we couldn't touch and we couldn't really exchange full body language clues. And we couldn't like smell each other. Like we were missing some information, but we got to know each other through lots of video chatting, and we fell in love that way. And I can genuinely say we really did fall in love. We had so many deep conversations. We had lots of, I guess, emotional intimacy to a level that I've never experienced with anyone before. In the past, it came close. I came closest to experiencing that level of emotional intimacy with women only, like with, girlfriends and friends. And I thought maybe I was a lesbian because I only my desire evolves through emotional intimacy. And I had only really experienced it with women in the past. But then, I met this person who surprised me in so many ways. Like, he's not a woman. He's a German speaker, native language. This was not a person I was expecting to fall in love with, but we fell in love, and it's the most amazing thing ever. Oh. And, I had to kind of question some things in my mind and break down some barriers and admit to myself, yeah, this is a person I really could see myself being with. This is a wonderful person, and I should not disqualify them because I was not expecting to fall in love with someone who had these characteristics.
I first of all, I'm so happy for you, and I know Tatiana.
Thank you.
We're so ecstatic for you.
Thank you. We're going to talk about it more on the show too, and we're going to have my spouse on the show as well.
I can't wait. And yes, I have a lot more to add to that topic, which is a whole other topic, because I recently met quite a few people who are Jewish and married to Germans. And
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I found it really fascinating, and I think it's a really beautiful thing, because I'm a very firm believer that you should not be punished for the sins of your country or the sins of people before you. And I think it's really nice to see that coming together. It really, my heart, I love it. I really do. And
yeah, actually, me too. It feels like a beautiful thing. And I think that as long as you have awareness and you actually talk about it, and how did this affect us both, right? Because I grew up in America, which was largely a kind of a Christian dominant culture, right? So growing up Jewish in America is one thing. How did that affect me? How did it affect me learning about the Holocaust? What did that do to my ideas? And, for him, how did it affect him growing up in Austria and learning, maybe people have beliefs that carry over from World War II, and that happened for both of us. So I think as long as you can talk about that with awareness and have awareness of how those things affected you both, then it makes for a healing experience.
I completely agree. And I don't want to get too much into anything of my fiance's personal life, but before me, he was with somebody who is German as well, from Germany. And I know that she had a lot of issues with wanting to not prove, but kind of show that she's not that representation. So she's a great girl, apparently, and wanted to show that those are not her beliefs. And we talk about this often, that it's wow, so ironic that you were with somebody before me who's German, who has nothing to do with the Holocaust, but is a good person and really wants to show people that not all Germans, not all Austrians, that kind of vibe, and that you're marrying somebody who is Jewish, who, 3 of my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. So he's coming from such kind of unique perspectives on both sides, but they do blend together in a way. And I think that's really lovely also. I love it.
Yeah. This is a fascinating topic, but we're kind of getting off of the Love is Blind a little bit. But I mean, you and I both had this experience where we fell in love with our partners mostly through online interactions and online conversations, which is kind of like the show. It's kind of like Love is Blind, because, we're we're getting to know each other without the full amount of information like body language and smell and physical presence, like just the energy of a person. I don't know how, maybe that sounds woo woo, but you know what I mean, right? Like it comes from body language, it comes from the person's demeanor. It's like, how do you feel when you're in the same room as this person? And that's a real thing. Maybe it's a little bit hard to quantify or describe, but that's a real thing, right?
Oh, it definitely is. I mean, there are so many things about the show that I found so fascinating. I really understood, and I know across the internet there are tons of memes about this, about how quickly these people were either falling in love or feeling like they were falling in love. And like you said, when you have most of your interaction and it's kind of unobstructed by physical touch, which is it's a negative thing, but it also can be a positive thing because suddenly that emotional intimacy feels so much more intense and you feel so connected. There's a safety there in a lot of ways where, you're not worried, like, especially with them, they're not worried. Are they into me because of how I look? Are they not into me because of how I look? Are they more attracted to me because we have great sexual chemistry in bed? Are they using me for sex? There's so many things that come along with that physical touch. And when you're building that intimacy without it, it's kind of like the gates are open. You can just be yourself. You can talk about what you want to talk about. And saw that with a lot of the couples. It was really, really nice to see. I know it seemed wild to most people watching. Like, how do they think they're in love in 2 days? But
but it's something where, like, until you experience that, it's hard to understand, right?
Yes, completely. And sometimes I'm a firm believer, whether it's woo-woo or not, I am a firm believer in when you know, you know. It happened to me. I knew.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
And I remember talking to you during this process. Like watching Love is Blind definitely reminded me of the process of falling in love with my spouse. And we had more than 2 weeks to get to know each other online, and we could see each other on video, but it was kind of really similar where we were just completely focusing on building emotional intimacy and an emotional connection. And this made me fall in love in a way that I've never fallen in love before. And I've been in love before, but it was different this time because we were just letting that emotional connection grow and be the focus of the relationship for some period of time. And then we built up this amazing desire, to see each other and meet and complete the circle and to see if the rest of it falls into place.
Exactly.
And I mean, I remember you telling me like that you connected with your now fiance in kind of a similar way, and you were thinking when you got together in person, is this going to work? Like, are we going to have chemistry in person? And you said to me that you had already been through that, and don't worry, it's all going to fall into place.
Yes.
And you were completely right.
I mean, there are a lot of people that are not kind of aware of themselves. You're very self-aware. You're constantly working on yourself, as am I. Maybe 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. But I think when you get to a place where you know what you want and you're confident in yourself, nobody is 100% confident all the time. But when you have an awareness, you've been through things, you just know when you meet that person, that's your person. You just know. And that there's something about, I really do feel there's something about body chemistry that even comes out in voice and comes out in discussion. And you know that it's going to work. And even if that physical chemistry is not fire the first time, it's going to get there really fast. It's just, you're connected. It's almost impossible that it wouldn't. You have that connection that you've built, that you know each other in a completely different way. I wasn't worried about you one bit. I knew it was going to be great when you guys met. And I see with these couples and in that kind of first phase and even the second phase, one of the things, and I know we don't have a ton of time left, but one of the things that I found really interesting, and I don't know how this would shift if the producers had gone a different way, most of the people that they cast were attractive. in some
Yes. And I think they could see that because they were seeing the other cast members from their same sex side. And so if it's a guy and he's looking around and he's like, "Oh, these other dudes are pretty attractive," that probably means the girls are attractive too.
Exactly. And I don't know how it would have worked if there were maybe some less traditionally attractive people. And at the end of the day, we all have different attractions anyway. Maybe some guy is into redheads and he falls in love with a blonde or a brunette. But for the most part, these were all fit, attractive people. And they had to know that the reveal was going to be fascinating because they've, built this rapport, and some of them have fallen in love, and they have this curiosity, this like burning curiosity. What do they look like? But there was no real disappointment that anybody felt. And I wondered if just human nature. I'm curious if they had cast less traditionally attractive people, if that would have been so universally the case.
Yeah, I'm curious to see a show like that too. And beauty is so in the eye of the beholder. This is a cliche to say, but I've seen ugly people become beautiful when I got to know them, and beautiful people become ugly when I got to know them.
Yes. So I guess it doesn't really matter, but I thought that would be important to kind of throw out there for people who maybe haven't seen the show, because that was one of my first reactions, was like, okay, all of these people are cute. They're all cute in different ways, but they're all attractive. So I thought it was interesting, and maybe that was kind of a safer bet for producers, and they wanted to really see how that went. But I do really think with the setup that it would have worked regardless, because at the end of the day, it is about love, and it's
about that emotional connection. I think that's what they're testing, is like, if you really allow an emotional connection to be the focus of the relationship for some period of time at the beginning, before you put the physical connection into place, does that accelerate the process of falling in love? Does that provide a good foundation? And I think from my own experience, and also from watching the show, the answer is a resounding yes.
Agreed. I completely agree. And I think it's an interesting take also. We've seen all of these like Married at First Sight and these other reality shows that have a similar premise, but the big difference is with arranged marriages, and I know that they really vary depending on the culture, depending on the family, but for the most part, they're not getting to know this person on a really emotional level before they meet. Sometimes with an arranged marriage, they're meeting that day. It's just this.
And now, of course, a lot of people have online relationships that they build online, and then they meet each other in person in a big reveal moment. And so this is increasingly relevant for a lot more people.
I agree. And I mean, the show is completely taken off. I don't know if they really realized how big this was going to get. I mean, the link I sent you guys was from Time magazine.
Yeah.
I mean, this has become a phenomenon. And I think, like you said, it's so relevant today, because this is how people are meeting. And this is kind of a lot of how the world we live in works now. Granted, we have Instagram and we have Facebook and we're seeing people, but it's still not the same thing. You can look at pictures, but it's that meeting in person, watching how their lips move, seeing how their hands move. There's so much that you're not getting. And I think it's really fascinating to kind of watch that emotional connection build.
Yes.
Without physical intimacy. I love the show. I am completely addicted to it.
Me too. And we're recording this on Thursday, February 27th. And this is when the last portion of the episodes have dropped as of today. So I know what I'm doing later tonight, Lauren. What about you?
Oh, same. I am so excited. And I do think that this could be a two-parter. I would love to get Tatiana's perspective, maybe after the whole thing is over.
Yeah.
Have a discussion on who's lasted, who's worked.
Totally.
In the outcome.
Did you want to end off the show right now, or do you have time to talk about some of the plot lines? Like, I wanted to talk about specifically the bisexual guy and what they focused on as like the story of an interracial couple.
Oh, I would love to talk about that. I have a few minutes. I can do that.
Okay, so we'll keep this brief, but, reality TV shows always have storylines that they kind of pull out. And I noticed that, certain couples got more airtime than others. I think there's especially one couple in particular I'm thinking of that just seems like kind of boring and normal, and they just didn't give them a lot of airtime.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. And there is, okay, spoiler alert here. So if you want to watch it, go watch it. Pause the show, come back. Um, there is one couple who gets together, and they match themselves, of course, but he has not, by the time he proposes, he has not been completely honest about something that bothers him.
Mm-hmm.
And, this may not always be a big deal to everybody, but he seems to feel uncomfortable about this, that he has dated guys in the past. He is bisexual or queer. Or I don't know how he describes his sexuality, but he has dated men in the past. And he feels nervous about revealing that to his fiance, who's a woman, because maybe he's experienced rejection from women in the past after this happened. And I can certainly understand that. As a queer woman myself, I don't date people, or I haven't dated people that are not okay with that. Well, is that really true? I don't know. I look for acceptance. My current spouse, of course, is totally accepting of this in a way that's not creepy, and that's what I look for.
Right. Yeah. Somebody who accepts it unconditionally but isn't turned on by it.
Yeah, is not being pervy or lecherous about it. Yeah. Exactly. And I think that's hard for some people to get there unless they themselves are also queer. And so what happens in this show is, the guy proposes to the woman, doesn't tell her yet that he is bi or queer.
That was so rough to watch.
Once they meet in person, he is brooding. He seems really upset. Their connection feels off. She's saying something feels wrong. She says to him, "What's bothering you?" And he says, "Okay, I have something to tell you." And then he spills the beans that he has dated men in the past. And then he kind of cringes and looks for her reaction. And she, to her credit, she didn't have a reaction that I felt was very negative.
I didn't either. Yeah.
She was just surprised, and she's like, "Oh, okay." But he immediately kind of took that as a rejection, and he was like, "Oh, fuck, I knew this was going to happen." And he kind of storms off and has a hissy fit. She goes to think about it. She prays. She thinks about it overnight. And the next day she comes back, and she tried to talk to him about, hey, it doesn't really bother me that you've dated men. It's just that you were not honest with me.
Yes.
About this until now. And why is that? And it seemed like she was open to having a conversation about that, but he just got so defensive and so, he reverted into a baby. He had this temper tantrum, and he was insulting her. He was being extremely disrespectful to her. He wasn't listening to her. As a result, that engagement blew up, and they broke up over it.
I think, they were really hard to watch because he has this particular guy. When you first meet him, there's a lot of bravado around him. And immediately I was like, this guy hates himself. He hates himself. Mm-hmm. That was my gut instinct, just even looking at him. So much bravado, so much overconfidence. It was so obvious that he is not comfortable with who he is. And it just, oh God, it was so painful to watch. And
I really empathize with that, because it's hard to accept yourself, especially if you're queer, and especially if you're a queer man. That is not consistent with the norms of masculinity in our society.
Exactly.
And my heart goes out to him, but the way he handled it, the reveal, it was, first of all, he was telling her as though he was saying, "I have cancer" or something. Right. He was telling her, and you could tell what he thought about this. And I think if he did have more self-acceptance, it would have been easier for her to hear. I mean, obviously the ideal reaction, I was thinking this, the ideal reaction from her would have been like, "Great, me too. I'm queer too. That's just no big deal,"
Well, I think with somebody like him, if she had said something like that, he seems so self-loathing that he wouldn't have accepted it. I think this guy needs so much help. And I also really, the way he treated her was completely unacceptable, because she's perfectly lovely and adorable.
Yeah.
And oh gosh, I have a lot of feelings about him, just because, like you said, it's still very, very unacceptable in a lot of circles for a queer man, especially a bisexual man. I don't know why that's kind of the last frontier that to be tackled with sexuality and acceptance.
Yeah.
It really feels like that's even less accepted than trans people in our culture right now. And it's just such a bummer, and it's really sad, because at the end of the day, he's loves everybody, or who he loves. And with the whole
that's just part of who he is. And it's really sad that anyone feels that that little self-acceptance, that it's affecting their relationships. And I guess I kind of settled on, I feel a lot of empathy for him, because I understand what that's like, to be constantly told that there's something wrong with you as you're growing up and as you're an adult from the culture. But at the same time, that's not his fault that he got told that, but it is his responsibility to heal from that and have more self-acceptance before he starts, before he's maybe ready to get into a relationship like marriage.
And he really, he really should have told her ahead of time. And I know that was probably a terrifying thing for him. And he was developing this connection, and it was probably very scary. But I think that was kind of a lesson to everybody, just watching this and just seeing his immediate kind of defensiveness and anger, and all of that anger that was put towards her is really anger he feels with himself.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, he was, exactly. When people say something to you, judgments of you, often it's a self-judgment that they have about some aspect of themselves that they're projecting onto you. And he was saying some things like, your wig is slipping, and like about her femininity. That was just so disrespectful. But obviously he sees parts of himself as feminine, and he hates that, because that's what culture tells you. Misogyny and homophobia are linked together. And that's
completely. It's gosh. I felt sad. Their whole relationship and how it completely crumbled just made me really sad. I think
me too, but it also was inspiring for me, because I thought that she had really good boundaries. She was not taking his abuse when he started when he was saying these disrespectful things to her, when he was getting defensive about why he didn't tell her this secret sooner. She didn't just stand there and take the insults that he was hurling at her. She walked away. And she said, it's sad that I'm going home alone, but I think she had a lot of self-respect, and I enjoyed seeing that modeled.
I agree. I think you said it perfectly. I completely agree. And it was really good. It was really nice on such a large platform like Netflix to see that and to have that shown. Like, okay, well, I love myself, and I'm not going to accept somebody treating me this way, regardless of what they've been through. She didn't have that immediate fixer moment that a lot of people have, like Peter the pilot has had on Bachelor, which is a whole nother discussion. But
I haven't seen that. This next on my list.
Oh, good Lord. He has a lot of that fixer mentality where you're watching it and you're like, Peter, you can't fix these women. Like, pick the girl that doesn't need to be fixed, or that's going to work with you. And she didn't do that. And I really appreciated that. It was like, I've done that in the past, where it's like, he just needs me to help him. It's like, you can help somebody. You can be there for them. You can be empathetic, sympathetic, work with them. But if they don't want to be helped, don't waste your time, especially in the beginning. And she had that really like deep sense of self. It was really beautiful to see. Sad, but beautiful to see.
Yes. Now real quick, the other storylines that I think are interesting were the one with the age difference, which we touched on earlier. Also, the interracial couple, where it was a white man and a black woman.
Yes.
Do you have time to get into either of those, Lauren? Or should we save it for part 2?
I think we should save it for part 2, because I have a lot to discuss about especially the interracial couple. I think there was a lot of ways it was handled that I really want to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, well, Lauren, this has been so fun to talk about this with you.
Love it.
I think once Tatiana hears this show, she's going to get excited about watching it too. That's my prediction, and maybe she'll be able to join the discussion with us.
I think she's going to really enjoy the show, as most people do. I mean, we're all getting something different from it, but at the end of the day, it is very entertaining. So.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, let's give credit to this is Love is Blind. It's available on Netflix. By the time you'll be hearing this show, all of the episodes should be out, at least in season 1. Hopefully they'll do a season 2 because I thought it was a fascinating program. And we have been Proof of Lovecast. Woo! You can visit our website at proofoflovecast.com. We'd love to hear from you. And I'm Stephanie Murphy. You're Lauren Kasovitz. Normally, Tatiana Moroz is hosting the show, but she hasn't joined us today. Hopefully, she'll be here for part 2.
Yes.
So thank you so much for listening to our show. If you like our show, tell a friend. Maybe we'll get to number 1 on Netflix.
Woo!
And thank you so much for listening to Proof of Love.
Bye, everyone.
Show me your heart. I know that it's beating. Tell me that you love me too. So I know your heart is true. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love.
Thank you for listening to Proof of Love. Please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Proof of Lovecast. More episodes can be found at proofoflovecast.com. And make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. Proof of Love has been brought to you by CryptoMediaHub.com, a boutique marketing and PR agency for Bitcoin and beyond. You are listening to Proof of Love with Tatiana Moroz, Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and Lauren Kasovitz. This show may contain adult content, language, and humor and is intended for mature audiences. If that's not you, please stop listening. Nothing you hear on Proof of Love is intended as financial advice, legal advice, therapy, or really anything other than entertainment. Please take everything that you hear with a grain of salt. Oh, and if you're hearing us on an affiliate network, the ideas and views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the network that you're listening on, or of any of the sponsors or affiliate products that you may hear about on the show.